Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. As always, I have a fantastic guest with me today. Her name is C.K. Collins, also known as Kelly, and she is a former award-winning publisher and owner of a hyper-local news publishing company in Nashville, who sold her company and retired from the industry in 2021. She now helps others get unstuck after experiencing a personal loss or setback, which prevents them from living an empowered life. And we've all been there at one time or another in our lives. Her recently published book is titled The Swipe Right Effect: The Power to Get Unstuck. Her book is a nonfiction creative memoir highlighting the great advice she received from friends at home and those she met in her worldwide travels as she recovered from a devastating life-changing event and found her own path to empowerment. Kelly, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you very, very much. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, and I'm excited to have you. You have a really, truly amazing story.
Thank you. It's been an amazing life.
It's been quite a ride. So why don't you
Yeah.
just start from there? Just let the audience know who you are and what your journey has been like, how you got to this point where now you have a wonderful book and you're launching a coaching service.
Right. Yeah. Well, good things do come from bad things sometimes. Most of the time, if you take a few steps forward. But yeah, my life was, I got married very young, and in 2017, I had this huge trifecta of change. And it was, my three daughters were grown and out of the house. So I was an empty nester for the first time. And I was getting a divorce. I'd been married 30 years, and betrayal happened. I found out, and I knew I would be getting a divorce, and because it was a long time betrayal, there really was no coming back. And then the third thing that happened was, because of the divorce, I needed to sell the business because I didn't want my business to get caught up in divorce proceedings. And so I really lost my three identities that I felt like defined me. And it all happened within an 8-month period of time. It was really quick. I decided to do some, I think when I look back now, courageous things. At the time, I thought I might be being stupid, but now I look at it like I was really courageous. I did a 500-mile hike in Spain, and that really was my stepping off point to starting my new life. And when I did that just 4 months after we separated, and I came back, we sold the house, got the divorce, and I bought a new house for myself. And the company that bought my publishing company, I stayed and worked for 3 years. So at this one point, I just had this moment where I'm like, I am just living a new version of my old life. And this is not working for me. I was not happy. And, and I'm surrounded by plenty of things that should be making me happy. I have great friends. I have great children. My family's all there in Nashville, but it just wasn't right. And so as the time approached where my 3 years was up with the company that bought mine, I decided to retire. And I went to my brother, who's my financial advisor, and I just said, what if I sell my house and I give away everything in it, and I travel for 1 or 2 years? Definitely 1, maybe 2. We'll see what happens. And, we just kind of looked at how everything laid out, and I had saved my money. I was a good saver, and I went for it. So October of 21, I started traveling. I went to 6 countries. I did a 30-day sailing rally. I hiked the Grand Canyon. I went to Spain and Portugal and hiked there. And I went to Buenos Aires and took tango lessons.
Oh, how fun.
It was great. And then I hiked in Patagonia after that, which was the highlight of the year. I have to say, it was absolutely beautiful there. But while I was traveling, I really was starting to increase my gratitude practice. I knew it was a healthy thing for me to do. And as I'm doing that, I'm thankful for Melissa, who said this to me. And then she gave me that bracelet that said, I am enough. And it changed my life that somebody did that for me. And I just started saying, I'm grateful for Melissa. I'm grateful for the bracelet she gave me. And then I'm grateful for Kelly. And when she said this to me, and I'm grateful for Allison, who said this to me. And I realized that this is something that not everybody has. Not everybody has that support system like I did. But there's plenty of divorces, and there's plenty of people going through a big life change, loss of a job, loss of a spouse, loss of a child. There's so many big life changes that happen, and then you're just stuck. No matter how successful you are, no matter how loved you are, you can still get really stuck. And so I wrote the book. I wanted to pay it forward, the advice that was given to me by all my wonderful friends. And yeah, so that's what got me here. And I love talking about it because I feel the more people who hear that I was stuck, I had everything going for me, but I got stuck, and I really, I'm on a mission. I want to help people get unstuck.
And like I said, we all get stuck sometimes in our lives. And I find it really so interesting and compelling that that friend of yours gave you that bracelet and that just turned things around. It's interesting, such a small random act of kindness can really make a huge difference in somebody's life when they're suffering or they're going through something, that is just overwhelming. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think that's just a really important notation to remember, that for those of us, out there, and if you're listening to this, you see somebody suffering, just one little random act of kindness can really turn their life around.
Just listening is, it's free. All it costs you is a little bit of time. I know time is our most precious commodity, but it's also the greatest gift you can give someone.
And I also want to go back to the 500 miles in Spain, because that was before you had started this path to empowerment and reinventing yourself and creating your own life or your new life. What was that like? I mean, I'm thinking 500 miles, number one, that's not a small distance. And, was it just a random decision? And then when you did it, what was that like as far as the experience?
Well, one of my best friends, he was actually our best friend. He was best man at our wedding. Bill had hiked 2 of the routes on the Camino de Santiago. And the Camino, some people call it El Camino. There's 28 different routes in Spain, and the Camino means the way, and Santiago means St. James. And so it's the way of St. James, and these 28 different routes that he walked to spread Christianity. And it's, 1,000 years, and people are still hiking it. And it did kind of slow down for a while, but a group of priests in the 1950s revitalized it and remarked the trails. And they were trying to bring people to Spain. And Spain had gone through a really hard time in that decade. And so they were trying to revitalize their country. And 250,000 people a year now hike just the one route I did, the 500-mile route. It's called the French Way because it starts in the French Pyrenees. And you go up and over the mountains. Gorgeous. The day one is my favorite day. But you go up and over the Pyrenees, and then you come south into Spain, and then you go west to Santiago. And it's a pilgrimage to see St. James, whose remains are in the cathedral. Allegedly, since I was in the news business. his remains are allegedly in the cathedral, but
got that.
People, apparently a lot of people believe it. Yeah. And I think, that I visited, and I'd like to think that is him, but who knows?
Well, that's like Buffalo Bill. I'm out here in Colorado, and Buffalo Bill's grave is located in probably 6 different sites in Colorado. And we actually saw Buffalo Bill's grave in South Dakota when we were visiting there like 2 years ago. So, and I think he's in Montana. He's everywhere. So I can kind of understand that. So allegedly that's where his
there's several Civil War heroes in Tennessee that
I'm sure
been buried in multiple places. Yeah.
Mhm.
I love my history buff, so I notice things like that.
Yeah, I am too, and I love history. So now I want to ask just from the physical aspect of it, because doing that hike, how many miles would you do in one day? What did your legs feel like, your hips feel like? Because as a
Mm.
recovering physical therapist, I'm always interested in that.
My youngest is a physical therapist.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she saved my elbow recently. So it depends on the terrain and how far apart the hostels are, because you stay in hostels pretty much
Okay.
every night. And so I did the least amount I ever did in a day was 8 miles, and the most I ever did was 25. But
Wow.
the average was 13 to 15. And the first 2 weeks are brutal, no matter how much you trained. I trained for 4 months. I worked my way up with the weight and the backpack. I started with
Mhm.
5 pounds and worked up to 20. I carried that 20 pounds for the whole month leading up to it. And I was doing 12-mile hikes. I was really prepping because I'd run half marathons before, and I knew how to train.
Right.
And then I found a friend who made a friend who I
Mhm.
met through a hiking group who was also going a day after me, and
Mhm.
we didn't hike together, but we trained together.
Mhm.
And I did end up seeing her too. That was really fun to run into her. But yeah, the beautiful thing is after 2 weeks, you just stop kind of feeling all of the backpack and all that. It's just so
Mhm.
natural. You just get stronger, the right muscles get stronger. And
Mhm.
because when I was training, I did hike every day, but I wasn't able to hike 12 miles a day because I
Right.
owned a business. I
Well,
had
you
to
have a
work.
life, right?
Yeah, I
Exactly.
had a life, yeah. And, so it's different when you get out there and you're actually doing, because the first day is I think 23 kilometers, which is 18 or 19 miles. So that
Mhm.
first day is killer.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of people get blisters and a lot of people don't. I mean, it kind of depends on how you
Mhm.
chose your gear.
Mhm.
Um, REI was my best friend. Everybody in REI was my best. What is the one thing you think I should take on the Camino? What's the one
Mhm.
thing you think I should take? I asked
Mhm.
everybody, and I
Mhm.
ended up getting very nicely outfitted by.
Mhm. Of course, you did your research. You're a journalist. Of course you
Mhm.
did. You asked everybody.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, it was great, and I read a lot of books, and there's one book, if anybody's interested in going, this is the one book I would recommend. It's John Brierley's Guide to the Camino de Santiago,
Mhm.
and he has several different routes, but the French way is the 500-mile route.
Mhm.
So I left seven. I had to do a lot with my business to get it ready for me to go.
Mhm.
But I left for 7 weeks, and 6 of that I was hiking. So I had a couple of days to get there. And then I wanted to have 5 to 7 days at the end of
Mhm.
it, knowing
Mhm.
I was coming home to a divorce and my house
Mhm.
selling. And I was going to
Mhm.
have to, upheave 17 years of stuff and memories and
Ugh.
31 years of marital stuff. Yeah. So I knew what I was coming home to. So I
Mhm.
really took that time to work on myself and heal my heart and
Mhm.
forgive and,
Mhm.
all of those
Boy,
things.
that's a tough one.
Hmm.
Forgiveness.
Always is. No matter what the topic, it is
Mhm.
hard. It's the way I try to explain it to people is it's a practice. It's
Mhm.
not, I forgive you and you're done. It is
Mhm.
something that you have to continually do over and over and over again. And
Mhm.
and I wish it wasn't like that. I wish I could have just said, "Okay, I forgive you," and be done,
Mhm.
but it was haunting. The
Mhm.
pain was haunting. And when
Mhm.
the pain's there, you realize, "Okay, I'm not quite done here yet. I got some more
Right.
work to do." But I do
So
think that it can be done.
so was that part of the forgiveness journey, let's just say, when you did that the 500-mile hike and when you came home? Is that when the forgiveness started, or you just became aware that this is what you had to do to completely heal?
I started trying to forgive. Yeah. I mean, I think
Trying. I like that.
on a surreal level, I
Mhm.
knew that I had a lot more forgiving to do. And I
Mhm.
think pain is always your measurement, there,
Mhm.
because if you're still in pain, I thinking the forgiveness has not happened. And no, it took
Mhm.
me years to get to a place where I could actually say, I want you to be happy.
Mhm.
Because my person left me for another person, and he's still with that person. And so this person is in my life. And so I didn't have to just forgive him. I had to forgive her too. And I didn't even know her.
Oh.
So it felt impossible to forgive somebody that you don't even know.
Mhm.
But I got there, and I didn't want to live in pain. I didn't want to
Mhm.
live an angry life. And
Mhm.
I think I left about 75% of what I needed to let go. I left it there, but
Mhm.
the rest, that 25% took me a lot longer to get that over
Mhm.
the final hump.
Well, you're very courageous and you're very smart too, just understanding that you had to do that because people who, can't forgive and they still have that pain and it turns to bitterness, and that really
Mhm.
affects our not only our mental health but our physical health as well.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite reviews on Amazon.
Mm.
Is a lawyer. I think they're female. It's kind of hard to tell. And her subject line of her review says, "Better, not bitter." And then she goes
Oh,
on to say, "I'm a divorce lawyer, and I will be giving this book to my clients
nice.
because Kelly found a way to um, move on without being bitter, And I was
Mhm.
just like, wow, like, I
Yeah.
hadn't thought of it that way.
Mhm.
There were plenty of moments where I was bitter, but
Of
luckily I didn't
course.
write the book until I wasn't bitter anymore. So I'm just being real.
Oh, geez, that's really funny. Now let's just go back in time. If at that point, even before you did the 500-mile hike, if you could have looked into the future
Mm,
and fast forward to 2023, if you could have seen yourself as an author, um, someone who's launching a podcast, someone who's launching a coaching career, someone who looks fantastic and has like all of this vibrant energy around her, would you have believed it?
gosh, no, because I was in so much pain. And I think that is a fantastic question so that people can hear me say that.
Mhm.
I I was stuck. I was stuck
Mhm.
in anger. I was stuck in pain. I was stuck in fear. I was so stuck. And my friends and this advice and this book are what
Mhm.
helped me get unstuck. And I mean, I got to a place of happiness within a couple of years, but I
Mhm.
just still had work to do. I was
Mhm.
happy. I was excited about my new life. It was fun to
Mhm.
date. It
Mhm.
was, it
Mhm.
was exciting to sell my business because
Mhm.
not everybody gets the chance to do something like that. Like I
Mhm.
built a business and I sold it. It was pretty cool.
Mhm.
And they wanted me to stick around because they thought I'd done a good enough job. They wanted me to keep going. And so there was all the positive things that were
Mhm.
happening in my life, but my life was my old life. And that was
Mhm.
when I had to I chose
Mhm.
to do something a little drastic. And, but that was the final step for me. That year of
Mhm.
travel it was exciting, it was healing, it was empowering. Solo
Mhm.
travel is just something very, very special. And
Wow.
I really want women to get out there and do more solo travel.
Wow. So let's just go back to the getting the unstuckness
Mm.
then. It's not like you're pulling the plug on a drain or something. It's a
Right.
slow process.
True. Very true. And yeah, I mean, I don't have the book in sequential order. I mean, I kind of hop around according
Mhm.
to how the empowerment practices
Mhm.
laid down. But I think that there are steps that you can take, and I lay them out
Mhm.
in the book. Like, this is what helped me. That I read
Mhm.
this book, and this is what I
Mhm.
got from that book, and you should also read that book.
Mhm.
I think there's plenty of Brene Brown books. Calling in the One by Catherine Wilbur Thomas is just a
Mhm.
brilliant book
Mhm.
about relationships and getting
Mhm.
past all of your trauma.
Mhm.
And I never really thought of what happened to me or any other things in my past as trauma until I understood. I
Mhm.
had a counselor and he said, "I think you have PTSD and I think that
Mhm.
we need to deal with it." And he sent me to another counselor who did help me deal with it. And he was right. And he saved me there. He really, he did me a huge favor, because it was right before I left on the Camino. And he was just like, I just want to make sure we've done everything we can do to set you up for success on the Camino. So I think, you know, I did a lot of things. I did a lot of work. I never was a self-help book reader ever. I would get 2 chapters in, put it down, and it would get dust on it. It wasn't who I was. And I discovered Audible and now I am a voracious consumer of self-help books and empowerment books. And I just was always a huge fiction reader before. But I have learned I'm an auditory learner, and that's why I wasn't able to really comprehend or stick with a self-help book. Now I drive around in my car. I go on 18-hour drives down to Nashville, and I listen to books all the way. And I just every chapter, I'm just like, wow, I needed to know that. Now I have that tool in my toolkit to help other people, but also to help myself. And so I think there's all these practical things you have to do, but the most important thing you can do is make a choice and choose to do something for yourself. That's
And
the whole,
sometimes that's the hardest part.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the title of the book came from. You know, it's like, I'm single, I'm dating, and I'm swiping right on dating apps, choosing someone. I'm choosing someone, and I'm choosing someone. And what I needed to be doing was choosing myself. And so that's what I'm saying. Swipe right for yourself. And the effect of that is you get unstuck. You have to choose yourself first, and you have to become the person that you want to date. You know, you have to love yourself before you can accept true love from another person. And so that's what this whole book is about, is getting unstuck and loving yourself.
Yeah. And I think I even saw that in your profile about dating yourself.
Yeah. Dating yourself. I mean, I jumped in and dated. I think I felt like I had something to prove because I had been rejected, and I didn't have anything to prove, but the dating was fun, and I don't regret it. I very, very rarely regret things, because I feel like if I learned from it, then there's no regret. And, but I do think that I was also choosing myself along the way. I was, you know, I chose to do the Camino. I chose to do a second Camino. I chose to do the sabbatical. It was, I did continually choose myself, and it eventually, you know, kind of got me to this place. I want everybody to feel, I just have this vibration in my chest. It's just like this frequency of happiness. And I've never experienced it this deeply, or this honestly, or this authentically as I do now.
Wonderful. That's great. It's a wonderful message for, I think, the listeners to hear, especially, you know, if they're going through something right now.
Yeah, it's possible. It's so doable. And yeah, I talk about choice all the time in the book. Like, you have to choose. I chose, she chose. And I don't know if I said that, but every chapter in the book, I interview the friend who gave me the advice. So every chapter is advice. And then I interview the person who was smarter than me that taught me. So it's kind of like 11 mini memoirs, really, but and they were very honest and open and courageous and vulnerable, and sharing their own stories. I do keep everybody's name anonymous, because I wanted them to feel like they could do that without affecting their families or children, whatever. And so everybody has a country music star name. So we have Dolly and Loretta and Shania.
Of course, because you are from Tennessee.
Yes, I am. So that was a kind of an homage to my country music city, music city, Nashville.
That's such a great idea. I think that's so funny. And that definitely would stick with people as well.
Yeah.
Very entertaining.
Well, when I go to book clubs, I've been to 3 book clubs and 2 book signings, and people will come up to me and say, I really like Shania. She was cool. I love when Dolly said that about being in community. And it's so cute, because, you know, oh, and my friend who got the nickname Dolly, she's blonde and tall and beautiful. She's, well, opposite of the real Dolly. She's tall. And she got me this little keychain that says, what would Dolly do? So there, I mean, we've had fun with it for sure.
Mhm.
And when the book launched, I set up a Zoom meeting and all of the women came to the Zoom. I think 2 people didn't make it, but,
Nice.
and they all got to meet each other, because
Mhm.
they were all anonymous, but I said, just come if you want. And 2 people were not
Mhm.
comfortable, which was fine.
Mhm.
And, but they all came and they got to meet each other and they were telling each other like, oh, I love what you said. And I love that
Mhm.
story you told.
Mhm.
And it was just, it was just beautiful. Cause I mean, they're South Africa, Canada, Sweden,
Mhm.
and then the rest are pretty much Tennessee.
Mhm. And
And
you
so
brought them together.
I did. I'm the common denominator.
Mhm. My goodness. Isn't that amazing? And like you said, something really wonderful came out of something really bad
Yeah.
because you
And
never would have met these women. You never would have had this book
right.
or the
Yeah.
path that you're
And
on now.
yeah, it's incredible. And yeah, I didn't think I'd be living in Rhode Island by the ocean, but I made that a goal to live by
Mhm.
the ocean. And then I just, put it on my vision board.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know how it's going to happen. I just
Mhm.
believe it will. And it
Mhm.
did. It was so organic too, how it all just
Mhm.
fell into place. But it was a lifelong dream to live by the ocean. And I finally
Mhm.
am. It's amazing.
Wow. You're really making time for yourself and taking care of yourself. That's very admirable.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have to be still to write. I can't be on the move. I mean,
Mhm.
I could have kept going and traveled the second year, but
Mhm.
this kind of feels like I'm on vacation because I'm living somewhere new.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
a whole, exploration. I'm meeting new people. The
Mhm.
community here is super supportive, and I mean, that 45 people show up at my book signing, and I just lived here a few months. It was just really
Wow.
really supportive, and
Yeah.
I love it. And the magazines have written about it, the newspapers written about it. It's just
Mhm.
I love it here. It feels like my little second hometown.
Do you feel like there might be another book in your future? I'm just
Definitely.
curious.
I'm writing
Okay.
2 right now.
Okay, I kind of figured.
Yeah, well, because people kept asking to meet with me and discuss it, and
Mhm.
I mean, and that's the whole book is a conversation, me with another
Mhm.
person. And
Mhm.
so I think it's just a natural um outcropping of more conversations that are
Mhm.
going to happen. And so because there's
Mhm.
already empowerment practices built into the book, I'm creating a
Mhm.
workbook for
Mhm.
that. So
Okay.
you can actually have a place to journal, write
Mhm.
these things down, have a place to come back and look at your progress. And
Mhm.
um
So tell us a little bit more about
neat.
the empowerment practices, because I'm sure
Okay.
that out of how many women did you interview? Was it 10 in the
10.
book?
Uh-huh.
So I'm sure that there are 10 different ways that these women had found their path back to empowerment.
Right.
So
Yes.
how do you present that in the book, and what could readers expect when they read your book and they come to the end of the chapter and they get to the empowerment practice?
So I relate it to these empowerment practices are things that I personally have done.
Mhm.
And I just kind of put my twist on them. But
Okay.
my twist came from the advice that my friend gave me. So the chapter 1, for example, I meet Brandy from Sweden. She just
Mhm.
happens to be a psychotherapist walking next to me on the Camino, like day 1. She was the first person I met. We had dinner, and then I
Uh-huh.
saw her 2 days later because we left on different days. So
Mhm.
I didn't think I'd ever see her again. And we're walking towards Pamplona, and she says, "Have you ever?" And she's just like, "Well, what do you want with your life?" I said, "I don't know. I know what I don't want.
Mhm.
I could tell you that real easy." And she said, "Well, you need to be thinking about what you want. Have you ever done a vision board?" And I'm like, "No, no, I'm not a vision board girl. No, that's not me."
Mhm.
And because I literally was the person who would roll their eyes at that. And I said, I've seen it before, and I know women really like that. But here I am with my 20-pound backpack and no poster board. So I don't
Mhm.
think I'm going to be doing a vision board this week. And she says, take out your phone. Like she was like, I'm done with you and your attitude. And she says, open your notes app. Now write down, try to get 10 words that are things that make you happy.
Mhm.
She's like, and think like physically things that make you happy. And, it's like running in a new city, being hugged from behind, being kissed behind my ear, And then she's like, okay, now things that that you do that make you happy, traveling with my children, running in a new city. And I started feeling the feels. I started feeling happy. And I was like, okay, this is crazy that I've waited 52 years to do a vision board. But I know it never occurred to me to start with words. I know that, and because I'm a writer, she's like, she went there, you don't have to have pictures. You don't have to do any of that. And so I think, so the end of that chapter, when I talk about that conversation with her, I talk about how to do vision board, but I really think you have to tap into your own creativity. You don't have to cut things out of a magazine. If you're a photographer, then take pictures of things that make you happy and put them in a folder on your phone so that you can just sit there and go through them when you're having a bad minute. It's that simple. If you're a painter, paint the things that make you happy. I'm a writer. I had a life coach 2 years ago, and she said, I want you to write your story, your future, the next year, what's going to happen in your life. This is your vision board. And you're going to write a story, a fictional, futuristic story. And I was like, okay. And I did it. And almost everything has come true in that story. So it doesn't matter what form the vision board's in, so it's that kind of thing. It's practical, but creative. And there's a lot of meditations. My favorite thing is the life purpose resume, where you really, you do a resume about your life, not about your work, and just things that make you happy, things that you're proud of, things that people did for you, anything that brought you joy and you feel like is aligned with your purpose, or aligned with helping you figure out your purpose. Then, that's a great exercise too.
Okay. So I have to say, I mean, I'm with you on the vision board thing. I was the one going, this again, everyone wants to do their vision board. And I got, every January, except for COVID. So that kind of broke the spell, or the trend. Every January, I'd get invited to like 6 or 7 different vision board parties. And of course, I never went to any of them because I thought, I don't want to collect magazines. I don't want to cut out pictures and paste them on a board. To me, this sounds like really stupid. Right. It just never really resonated with me. But thinking about writing down simple words, or even looking at pictures, I could pick up my phone if I'm in a bad mood and just scroll and see some of my pictures in the phone of, the dogs, or, trips that I've taken or whatever. I'm in a better mood already. So I like the way that you presented this vision board, that it doesn't have to be visual.
Right. Yeah. And there's electronic vision boards now, an app where you can just create it. Canva. I love Canva. I do all my graphics. I design my book cover in Canva. I love Canva. They have vision boards in there. They have mind maps. And I think a mind map is a great way to start getting ready for your vision board. And it's just basically a brain dump. And it's really all fairly simple. You just have to choose to do it. But you don't have to choose to do it like everybody else. Put your own twist on it so it feels cool and hip and fun.
And you.
Yes.
It's not like you're trying to imitate somebody else, because that's that doesn't work either.
Yeah. I mean, I think now that I understand, I'm an auditory learner. It took me forever to figure that out. Then, now I understand kind of why that I learn the way I do and how I process the way I do. And so that in itself was really helpful. And it made it more exciting for me when I recorded my audiobook, because I'm like, this is how I would have actually listened to my book. I wouldn't have picked it up to read it. I would have listened to the audiobook.
Did you narrate it yourself?
Cool. I did.
Yeah.
I did. I heard, I did some research, but I heard from the experts, quote unquote, that that people, nonfiction books, people really prefer, or a memoir, they prefer to hear from the author.
Yeah, I narrated my first book, and I haven't done an audiobook yet for the Ninja book, and I'm not even sure if I will, because I don't know. It's been out for a year, and I haven't done it yet, and I'm still kind of sitting on it.
Yeah, it was quite the project, but I felt like I needed to own it. Like I needed to do this myself. And I have 4 more books that I want to write outside the workbook, and the
Mhm.
next one is called The Traveling Effect, and it's about the year of solo travel that I did.
Oh, that's good.
But
Yeah.
it's hard for me to imagine somebody else reading that because it's such a
It's your
personal
story.
story. Yeah. So, yeah, I think plugging into your juices, your creative
Mhm.
juices is really what makes things like this work.
Mhm. So speaking of creative juices, what made you decide to launch a podcast?
Wow, you're the first person to ask me that.
Really? I'm always
Yes.
curious because I still wonder to this day. I've been doing it now. I think I'm in my 5th year of podcasting, and I still ask myself that sometimes. So,
I know.
why
I
did I
want to have
decide
you
to
on
do
as a
this?
guest.
Like, thank you. I would love
I
that.
need a ninja.
Everybody needs a ninja.
Everybody needs a ninja. Um, because I want the conversations to continue.
Mhm.
And some of the anonymous people in my book are have agreed to come on.
Mhm.
And I've already interviewed one of them, but I feel like I know people who can help. And
Mhm.
so if I can bring them in and have these conversations that are accessible to anybody, because it's
Mhm.
free to listen to a podcast.
Mhm.
I mean, it's way more free than buying a book, So if
Mhm.
the conversation ends up helping someone, my word for the year is gather. And
Mm.
so it just feels like everything is about that right now. Gathering
Mhm.
with other podcast hosts, gathering at a conference, gathering at book clubs,
Mhm.
and the podcast just seemed to um, evolve out of
Mhm.
it. And I think I've done 20 something podcasts now talking about the book.
Mhm.
And I think just the journalism background too, it just seems like a
Mhm.
very natural fit.
Mhm.
And I never really did any video or anything until COVID, but
Mhm.
this format is how we could talk to our city leaders and
Mhm.
understand or help our readers understand what was happening. We would interview the
Mhm.
mayors, we would interview really anybody that the readers, we would say, readers, who do you want to hear from
Mhm.
while you're isolated in your homes? And
Mhm.
they wanted to hear from restaurant owners. How's it going? How are they surviving? They wanted to hear from the mayor, the president of the chamber, the head of the hospital, and we would bring them in. And I was part of my reporters did most of it, but
Mhm.
I was very involved in the chamber. So I started interviewing like this. So it feels really natural.
Mhm.
And I want to help people. That's the
Mhm.
main thing.
Mhm. Well, you can reach an awful lot of people with a podcast and help a lot of people. So, congratulations. And yeah, it's very exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. The same name
And
as the book, so it's easy.
thank you. I was going to ask, what is the name of the podcast?
Yeah, the swipe right effect.
Okay.
And yeah, it'll be about choosing yourself. And I think, when you get stuck like that, it's also partially because you've lost your identity. And
Mm,
I think that we're just going to have conversations around that. Like,
mm,
how do you proactively begin to live a new life?
mm.
How do you proactively go after what your life purpose is so that you're going to live a fulfilled life, And so I just want to talk about it. Choose
And
yourself.
how to love yourself. That's a
Yes,
big one.
it is. It's so much harder than it should be
I
because
know.
we were created to love ourselves and be loved. That's our whole purpose for being
Yeah.
is to love and be loved. I believe.
But I
And
think that society and life kind of just sucks that out of us.
it
You
sure
know, that
does.
we have to
Mhm,
put other people first. You have to take care
mhm.
of other people and put, yourself last. Otherwise, you're selfish. You need to be able to serve others. Well, you can't serve others if you can't serve yourself.
Right. And it took me a long time to figure that out.
Yeah, well, join the club.
And yeah. So women, hear us roar.
Exactly.
Uh,
Exactly. Look in the mirror and love what you see.
yeah. We're all unique. We're all special. We're all loved and we're all
Mhm,
divine. There's that
mhm,
universal divine spirit within all of us
mhm.
that is there to be loved.
Very nicely said. And now talk about your coaching service. What made you decide to go into coaching? I mean, it does seem to be a natural segue, but it is a lot
Yeah,
different from what you had been doing in your professional life. And of course, all the changes then that you went through to get to where you are now. I mean, it
right.
does seem like a natural segue.
Yeah, when I was a publisher, I was, how do I say, I was chairman. I couldn't think of the right word. Chairman of a national group of independent publishers. It was called Lion Publishers, and they really helped um, grow our business. Like the advice that we got at the conferences, and the networking, and the connections, and it was mostly journalists who had been laid off and started their own business, and they're sinking their life savings into starting these businesses. And because my background, I had a partner who was a journalist, and she exited the business a few years later, but we had a journalist and we had a business person. And so I'm learning the journalism and she's learning the business part. And we were kind of a dynamic duo, and I grew in the ranks at Lion and ended up chairing it for 2 years. And I did a lot of coaching at that time. So I have already coached independent publishers and helped them build their businesses. And so it does feel natural to go this direction. I've done neuro-linguistic programming certification, and I'm finishing up a life coaching certification. And I have the life experience certification of divorce and running a business. But I really want to work with women who have their life, like I have a successful life, I'm just unhappy, and so let's get together and let's figure that out. And I've already invested all this time in building these empowerment practices, so I really want to help people put it to use. And I think accountability is one of the biggest things that helped me heal. As my friends holding me accountable, my family holding me accountable, my children holding me accountable to becoming a happy person. They all wanted me to get back to being happy. They wanted me to have more than I had. And their belief and their vision in me helped me get there.
How did this, now that you mentioned your girls, how did this impact them? The whole divorce and the situation of betrayal. I would imagine that would be incredibly painful to see your mom go through that.
Yeah. And it was incredibly painful for them too, because they also felt betrayed. And they've all done a lot of work, and they had very supportive partners, husbands. And they've done a lot of work with their dad to get things, he was very proactive. He wanted a relationship with his daughters, and he loves his daughters, and he was always a good dad. And so, they just kept reaching out towards each other, and they've made it back. It's all going to be okay. And it just takes time to heal. And, I think the final kind of thing that was happening in our lives, which is so unusual and completely unfortunate, is that several people around us, some family, some friends, the father in the family passed away. And I think that, the idea of having lost him, or had the possibility of losing him without it being reconciled, was a motivation to just make it happen. Okay, I'm going to get over myself already. This is going to be hard. This is going to suck, but I'm going to do it. And what I tell people now, having watched them go through that and having come through it on my side, is and I can honestly say this now: when you are depressed and sad and feeling powerless, and you have this idea in your head, what's going to happen if I forgive, if I let go, if I reach out, it's going to be like this. And you just spin on it. It's never as bad as what you've made up in your head. It is frequently 10 times easier than what you've made up in your head. And getting it over with is so much better than hanging on to it. And I said that to my daughter the other day. It's not going to be as bad as what you have in your head. There's no way it's going to be that bad, some scary job interview or something.
I know
And
it's amazing what we do to ourselves. We just, when you're faced with something and we create these scenarios in our head that just
mhm,
kind of snowball into such a horrible situation. And it's like, you know what? What's the worst really that can happen?
right. And you can prepare yourself for those moments.
Hmm.
You can use meditation and yoga and hiking and empowerment practices. And
Hmm.
I think, meditation's been huge for me. And I
Hmm.
think that really getting aligned with my subconscious
Hmm.
and to stop the chatter going on.
Hmm.
Like, I
Hmm.
actually have control of that, what's going on in there. I need to tell it to
Hmm.
shut up. And meditation, I couldn't do it until I discovered, a much deeper meditation practice. So, but it's practice, practice, practice.
Like everything else, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, Kelly. So where can people find you? How could they get a hold of you if they have questions for you? They'd like to get a little bit more information of your coaching practice. Where can they find you?
My website is ckcollins.co.
Hmm.
And there is a lot of resources available on there, especially under the references tab. I
Hmm.
have a list of all the books that I mentioned in my book. You can find my book there too, but
Hmm.
there's also a playlist of inspirational music that's free. There's a lot of fun things. You can read the
Hmm.
first chapter for free.
Hmm.
If you go, you can find that on my website, but you can also do swiperightchapter.com, and you
Hmm.
can go there and download the first chapter free. And then you decide if you want to, continue.
Hmm.
And I think that's, and my coaching will be there too. I'm going to do a retreat in September for women who want to come together and do some of this healing as a group.
Oh,
And that'll be in
nice.
Newport, Rhode Island. Yeah.
Hmm.
So that web page is not live yet. It's built, but I haven't rolled it out yet. So everything about the coaching will be at that ckcollins.co.
Okay, excellent. Well, Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show. This has been absolutely delightful. And wow, what a powerful story of healing and empowerment.
Yeah, thank you. I'm very grateful.
You've already given us so much fabulous information and tips and things that the audience is going to be thinking about for a long time. I know that, but do you have one final pearl of wisdom that you would like to drop on the audience before we close?
Yes, thank you.
Hmm.
And it's going to be a little repetitive, but
Hmm.
I really want everybody to understand that we all have power, and
Hmm.
the power is, it's been universally given to us.
Hmm.
It's our will. We have the right to choose or not choose. And so the power to get unstuck is in your choice. The choice to do one thing to start, just one thing to feel better. And then it's also really important to recognize that by not making a choice, you're making a choice. You're choosing not to get better. And
Hmm.
so, if reach out to a friend, reach out to a minister, reach out to a life coach, reach out to a counselor, a family therapist, do something
Hmm.
to if you make the choice, but then reach out to somebody so you're held accountable.
Hmm.
And man, the second you do it, you start to feel better immediately,
Hmm.
because you're doing something for yourself. So the power is in your choice.
Excellent. Great advice. Well, Kelly, thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. This has been great. And I'm very happy to meet you.
Well, I'm happy to meet you too. I love talking about empowerment. And everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you. And please do share this episode. Go to Kelly's website and check it out. She does have some fabulous information on that site. Check out her book and do check out her podcast as well. And remember to swipe right for yourself. And remember that you have all the power within yourself to make your life a life of empowerment, happiness, joy, and peace. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.